Hello guys, welcome to another video by Smurf Masher. Today this is a LEGO Worlds build. It's not a tutorial, it's very complicated, but I hope that this can give you some inspiration you can follow along. First thing to do is to create a circle. Now you create a circle in a very similar way to the way you would in Minecraft, and Circle Generator online will help you do that. Basically build your circle and you start to build the outline for the Millennium Falcon, as you can see I'm doing right now. So once you've built your outline on a 2D level, what you then want to do is copy and paste it above it so you create the general shape of the Millennium Falcon. And what you're going to do then is just fill it in. As you can see here, I'm just going between the two layers that I've copied and pasted, and I'm joining them together using some just standard blocks. I'm using smaller blocks, and the reason I'm doing that is because if I paint it later, it looks better because there are smaller blocks in there. And then you start to detail it. The way I detail it is I put random blocks there, I use small grill tiles. Obviously you have to look at a picture of the Millennium Falcon and try and match the details as best you can, but only really do that with the really prominent things like those circles that you see at the front there. When it comes to roughing it up with other little blocks, just scatter them all over the place. If you see an area that's too bland and it's got a flat area, add some block with a bit of texture to it. So you can use various different tiles which have got grooves in them or slots. You can use circle pieces, you can use a mixture of very smooth pieces and also rough individual blocks as well. Keep on doing that and just scatter them all over the place, and you end up with what I have at the front here. There's no rhyme or reason to it. You basically go over it and just try and rough it up as best you can until you get something that looks like that. Okay, now it's time to do the hardest part of this entire build, and that is to build the cockpit. The cockpit on the Millennium Falcon is tricky because we're quite limited with these blocks, and we've got to create a circle, then we've got to have it going at a 45-degree angle into the body, and we've got to have the part which curves in at a 45-degree angle to also be curved. So it's like a pipe that's been bent at a 45-degree angle. It's not easy. It took me quite a few goes, and I think this particular piece of the build took me more time than anything else. I've tried to cut it down as best I can to give you a rough idea how I did it, but essentially what I did was I created a spherical area, and then I created the 45-degree angles off of it, and I tried to curve it afterwards. It did require me to delete and redo a number of these pieces, but basically just build the circles, build the shapes, and then try to add the curves to it afterwards, and that might involve removing some blocks to clear the way. Now what I'm doing here at the front is surprisingly easier than I thought it would be, and that is to create the actual iconic front of the cockpit, which is really what everybody looks at as soon as you look at the Millennium Falcon. And I was worried at this point that I hadn't made the ship big enough and the scale wasn't large enough for me to put detail in. I wanted to, but I think it came out okay, and I'm quite pleased with the end result, and it was a bit of a relief, to be honest, because obviously I was quite committed at this stage, and I didn't want to just delete the whole thing and start from scratch. So what you do is you use single blocks, single tiles, which are just 1x1 pieces, and you build up the cockpit shape with it. The lower part of the cockpit doesn't have any holes, it's just a completely solid structure. So you basically try to copy the shape that I've done at the top there, but apply it to the bottom as well without any gaps for windows, obviously. At the front it was a bit tricky because there's a round circle area which is like an old-fashioned window in an old house, and I had to kind of do that a little bit abstract and just do a square with a couple of holes in the front of it and try to round it a bit at the front as well. It came out okay, it didn't look too bad, but I still think that this could have looked better if I'd gone maybe about 10-20% bigger, but it came out okay. I'm quite pleased with it, as you can probably tell from the thumbnail of this video. Now this section here is quite good because you can copy it over onto the other side and flip it. So you only have to build this once, and I use this with a mixture of tiles which slope upwards, and just did 2 different staggered points. And then once you've done that, you copy it, you flip it round, and you plonk it on the other side. Now here's where it does get quite tricky, because what you've got to do is you've got to slowly create a gradient down from the centre of the ship down to the circumference of that circle that you created earlier. The one good thing about the Millennium Falcon is it's quite a rough ship. There's no smooth curves on it particularly, so the more rustic you make it, the better, really. It doesn't really look too bad. It just makes it look more weathered, and you know, gives it that kind of busted up look that everyone loves about the Millennium Falcon. But you do have to try and maintain the curve as best you can as you go down. As you can see, I'm going down a little bit. I'm using quite large pieces which are completely flat, and I'm just overlapping them and bringing them down slowly. Towards the end of this build, I did have to go over the last 20% that gets near the edge and just play around with it until I could get the shape a little bit better. There's no real way of giving you advice on this other than just look at it with your eye, and if you think it looks wrong, go over it and re-add it. As you can see, where my cursor is right now, later on I have to add a couple more layers there to taper that a little bit more, because it's just, you know, it's flat and then it does a big hump, so I had to change that a bit. Now you can copy and paste with this. The only problem is that the side that you copy works perfectly well on the 45 degree opposite. The other two don't, unless you've managed to somehow design a completely perfectly symmetrical shape, which I couldn't. So I had to do it the copy and paste once, then I cut it out, pasted it over the top, and then I had to manually clean it up, as you can see here where I'm adding blocks underneath. Now this is a little bit further along. What I've then done is I've added a lot more detail to the outer shell on the top. As I'm zooming in here, you can see what I've done. And again, this is what I explained earlier, where you add lots of small pieces, you look at a picture of the Millennium Falcon, and you try and add the shapes and lines that you see in the build. Obviously the most prominent pieces are those big heat exhausts on the back of the ship. And as I said earlier, this is what I'm doing here. I'm trying to clean out those smooth contours so that it's got a better gradient as it comes up from the front of the ship. As you can see here, I'm adding the detail, and this is exactly what I did on the rear of the ship, which you didn't see. So I'm using a combination of different blocks. I'm using flat but smooth blocks. I'm using grill pieces which have got a very rough texture to them. I'm even dotting around flat normal basic blocks which have got the studs still attached. And another thing I've done is I've used a lighter colour underneath, and now I'm adding a slightly darker colour, a darker grey on top. That gives it that rough look that you want from the Millennium Falcon, and I think it came out okay. Now this bit's the hard bit. This is where I'm trying to create an additional curve coming down at the 45 degree on the cockpit. The only way to do this is to have a couple of guiding lines, which I've done either side, to the left and right. And now what I'm trying to do is, as I'm trying to bring it up, I'm trying to curve it slightly as I'm going up with those single block pieces. And I'm doing exactly the same on both sides. Now I'm going to add detail to the sides of the ship. Now if you look at a picture on Millennium Falcon, the sides of it look like there's just a mass of squished wires and cables and electrical components all sort of compressed, almost like a car that's been squished at a trash yard or something like that. And the best way to achieve that is to use lattice blocks and to use blocks which have got natural grooves and cuts in them already. Any block that's got built-in texture or contours to it, just dot those around as you go along the sides and stick the odd block out a couple of blocks as well, so it's not completely flat all the way down. Even if you're using textured blocks, you want to, as you can see here, I've brought those square blocks out just a couple of blocks out, and that creates that bobbly bumpy texture that you want. Now you can use a couple of built-in blocks or built-in objects that are in your inventory, especially if you're using sandbox mode. I used a TV camera, and what I've done is I've then added a couple of blocks to itself so that I could create a laser gun on the top. So just got the television camera and just stuck some straight beams coming out the front of it to give it a laser turret. The side piece here, which I'm doing, which is I assume the airlock on this ship, you only need to do this once because you can copy and paste it to the other side and it flips perfectly, so there's no problem there at all. Again, look at a picture of the Millennium Falcon and try and capture that kind of indented rough bit inside that circle that you got on the end, and then copy and paste it and plonk it on the other side. I love copy and paste in LEGO Worlds, it's just brilliant. It saves so much time compared to if you did the same thing in Minecraft, it'd be a nightmare. Now this is fantastically easy. All you need to do is just use a fluorescent blue on the back of the ship, just paint it in that groove that you've already created, and you don't even have to add any texture or anything else like that because it glows so much you're never going to see any texture anyway. And as soon as you plonk that in, you've got the illusion of the engine being on at the back of the ship, and it looks great. It's the perfect colour. I'm just so pleased with that. So easy, so simple. What I'm doing here is I'm using metallic silver, and I'm just using that to add a bit of texture onto the back because, to be honest with you, I got a bit lazy at this point, and I thought I'd paint it to give it texture instead of adding blocks to bobble it. And that is the build complete. I'm really pleased with it. I just, for some final touches, I added some Rebellion red to the outside of the ship just by painting it on with reddish brown. And I'm pleased with it. It came out okay. I'm so glad that the scale wasn't too small when I could achieve my aims with this smaller size. And as we do a little flyby, I hope you like it because I'm very pleased with it. I'm very proud of it. And the wonderful thing about LEGO is you can copy and paste this and use this anywhere else in your worlds or any of your friends' worlds as well. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe and like. See you next time. Bye.